Let's shift focus to one of my favorite segments right here, News Diary, all to do with what exactly Kenyans are talking about on social media. And you well know Kenyans on Twitter can be quite a rowdy bunch, if I may say so myself. I'm joined by Raymond Muthe from the Digital Desk. It's good to see you. Good morning. How are you doing today?
Morning, Jesse. How are you doing? Baridi ko mingi leo.
Hey, baridi ni mbaya. Anyway, let's leave it at that. But let's talk about what Kenyans are excited and tweeting about on social media, or Xing about, is it? Anyway, let's start with one of the trending topics, all to do with, how time flies. It's exactly 1 year since the polls. At a time like this last year, we were in the heat of the political moment, waiting for the ballots to be counted and the results to be announced. So what's exciting Kenyans about how time flied and, the changes so far?
Yeah. Absolutely. And, I'm actually going to pick this from another angle that Kenyans are picking online and saying, is it really 1 year since the government took charge? Because there was a discussion about whether it should be around the inauguration or it should be around when Kenyans lined up to vote. Nevertheless, it's been nearly a year by all right, and there's been a lot of changes. There's been implementation of programs in the agriculture subsector, the Hustler Fund, which was one of the biggest campaign points for President William Ruto. And he was talking about this as looking as ambitious as people would imagine. And it has now been effected. I was speaking to the PS for MSMEs yesterday about the Hustler Fund. And there's a lot of people borrowing. In fact, 8 billion was borrowed in the first, 6 billion was borrowed in the first 8 days. Jesse, can you imagine? So those are some of the things that people are looking at online. And people are saying to fanyia government birthday.
Well, I'm sure they'd be cutting cakes in one place or the other, but it's also interesting to monitor the conversation in terms of whichever side of the political divide you're leaning. Those leaning towards Azimio, are definitely trying to hold the government to account in terms of the promises that were handed and what hasn't been delivered so far. Those supporting the government are urging those in the opposition to give them time to implement, so it's a very important discourse that's going on in the country. But of course, key focus is on the plight of Kenyans. Let's talk about the salary increment that seems to have made its way to the social media pages. What exactly is happening? What are Kenyans saying about this?
Kenyans are reacting to the fact that the president and the deputy president did not get a pay rise. There was a little talk about it earlier on when the president was speaking at the KICC, launching the 5,000 digital services for the government. And he said it was not necessary for the president and the deputy president to get a pay rise, which has now been held by the SRC. There are people who are questioning the independence of this office because the SRC is supposed to operate independently, apart from, away from control by the executive. People are questioning that as well online. But we've seen the biggest beneficiaries of this pay rise being the teachers, the armed forces, and the counties. Remember, the Treasury has allocated 27.1 billion shillings to this particular increment, which had been stopped earlier.
Well, that's the big conversation, the big salary review. Well, we wish we were in that category, don't you?
We can't say much about that because our bosses are watching anyway.
Anyway, let's continue with other issues. Yesterday, so much focus was at the Bomas of Kenya, the Dialogue 2.0, if I may call it. The talks before the talks. And finally, the day of the talks happened. We saw the 10-a-side team make its way to the Bomas of Kenya. And equally, if our viewers are following up on our bulletins, they were able to get some nitty-gritty details on what exactly was canvassed on day one. What are Kenyans excited about, even as we look forward to next week when the talks finally begin?
Jesse, I want to tell you that Kenyans on Twitter are the most brutal force that exists on the internet, because tell me why, out of bipartisan talks, Kenyans managed to notice that Kimani Ichung'wah was late, which is contrary to what the president was talking about, people being timely. The DP Rigathi Gachagua talked about it as well. Kimani Ichung'wah was late, held up in Nyeri, according to reports, and he said he couldn't travel because of bad weather. Now, Kenyans are questioning, is it bad weather? Is it one of those excuses that the president was talking about?
Okay, that's interesting. And equally, what are Kenyans saying about the outcome of these talks? because history has taught us correctly. Looking back at the bipartisan talks, there wasn't much in terms of outcomes, and it stalled along the way. This time round, there seems to be goodwill from both sides of the political divide, but are Kenyans taking this with a pinch of salt in terms of the outcome?
Well, in fact, it has actually been 1 year since they voted. Among this list of things that the president had said they had committed to talk about was the IEBC reforms. The IEBC, selection of IEBC commissioners. Kenyans have picked issue with this particular one, but we've seen the cost of living taking back seat at the talks. So it is a mixed reaction, really, because some part of the divide feel that the issues being addressed are of national importance. Some of them feel sidelined, but of course it's a push and shove against between the opposition and the government. So we hope to see what comes out of these talks. We'll be definitely monitoring this on our social media platforms as well as our TV stations.
Well, you know, the good thing about this is, according to the optics, they don't seem to have gone to the negotiating table with clenched fists, if you know what I mean. So there might be progress this time round. It's a matter of time, as you mentioned. Let's wait and see if there'll be any, substantial developments around this round of dialogue. Well, that's what's happening locally. Let's shift focus to matters emanating from around the globe. But what else are Kenyans talking about on the socials?
There is this particular issue about Tory Lanez. So Tory Lanez is a Canadian rapper who was sentenced to 10 years in prison for shooting another popular rapper or musician in the foot after they came off of a birthday party in 2020. That was in about 3 years ago. So it so happens that Megan Thee Stallion was shot. Now the court has identified that the perpetrator of this act was Tory Lanez, who has now been sentenced to 10 years in prison. Kenyans on Twitter have said that this was a long time coming because Megan Thee Stallion has been said to be suffering from depression and shaming and all manner of attacks online perpetrated by bloggers allegedly hired by Tory Lanez. And the court identified that this was a crime committed by him, and they sentenced him to 10 years in prison. The trial was to begin in 2022. He was being held in jail since 2022. And then this is coming at a time when, the entertainment industry was looking forward to such a judgment, because there was a little bit of talk between, is it violence against women? Is it violence against black women? Or is it just gender-based violence?
Well, that's definitely an emotive issue. Well, we definitely wish Tory Lanez all the best as he serves his sentence. We don't know if he'll appeal, though. Are you a fan of Tory Lanez or Meg Thee Stallion, if you had to choose as to finalize?
I wouldn't pick a side, Jesse. You're putting me on the spot. I wouldn't pick a side.
You're playing smart, I see. Anyway, you've learned from the politicians. Thank you so much, Raymond, just giving us an update of what Kenyans are talking about on social media. We call him Ray in the circles right here. So make sure you follow him at Muthee_Raymond. That's on Instagram for more details about what exactly is happening on the socials. That's what's trending on the 10th day of August. Allow us to take a short break at that particular note, even as we continue informing you about the latest news making headlines. Do keep it KTN News. As we come back, we'll shift focus to a sister station, Spice FM, where I understand today the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, Lynn Mengich, had a sit down with the host, just breaking down the big salary reviews for civil servants as it was highlighted and indicated in today's dailies. So do stay with us. We're taking a short break. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.